Hello everyone, I am the storyteller and I am here to help you tonight. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before we begin, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Now get comfortable and listen closely, because what you are about to hear was never meant to be found. The Freemasons, one of the most enduring secret societies in history, have long been surrounded by speculation, fear, and rumor. Yet beneath the myths lies a documented system of ritual, secrecy, and symbolic discipline that shocked observers from its earliest days. Originating in the late medieval stonemason guilds of Europe, Freemasonry gradually evolved into a society with highly structured initiation ceremonies, oaths of secrecy, and hierarchical progression, all designed to cultivate loyalty, moral discipline, and philosophical understanding. Unlike fantastical depictions of dark magic, the real rituals were disturbing because they operated on psychological and symbolic levels, creating intense allegiance, secrecy, and obedience, all reinforced through ceremonies whose full meaning was hidden from outsiders. Authorities, clergy, and political leaders often regarded these rituals with suspicion precisely because they could not observe or control them, a fear that persists in public imagination even today. Initiation into the Freemasons involved more than simply joining a club. It was a carefully orchestrated process of transformation designed to impress upon candidates the seriousness of secrecy, the weight of oaths, and the moral discipline expected of every member. Surviving historical records, including early lodge minutes and testimonies, reveal that initiates were subjected to solemn oaths that forbade disclosure of any ritual, sign, or password under threat of expulsion and social disgrace. Candidates were blindfolded, symbolically reborn into the fraternity, and guided through ceremonies rich in symbolic acts, some physical, some verbal, intended to challenge courage, loyalty, and moral judgment. To the uninitiated, these rites were incomprehensible, yet for those within the order, they created profound psychological bonds that made secrecy both sacred and terrifyingly binding. One of the most unsettling aspects documented by historians is the intensity with which Freemasons were encouraged to report disloyalty or deviation from the rules. Members were expected to hold themselves and each other accountable, creating an environment of constant internal surveillance. This ritualized self-discipline, reinforced by ceremony, oath, and hierarchy, ensured that loyalty and obedience became almost automatic, shaping behavior far beyond what ordinary societal pressure could achieve. Contemporary critics accuse the society of being manipulative, claiming that the combination of ritual, secrecy, and psychological pressure could control thought and loyalty in ways that threatened existing religious and political institutions. Even if exaggerated, the underlying principle was clear. The rituals were not theatrical. They were functional, enforcing a hidden social and moral order. Freemason rituals also involved symbolic punishments and moral tests, often misunderstood by outsiders as sinister or horrifying, but grounded in allegory and ethical instruction. Early trial records, pamphlets, and anti-Masonic writings document accusations of oath-breaking punishments that were verbal, symbolic, and intended to instill obedience, demonstrating the intensity of their internal control. While there is no verified historical evidence of physical torture within Masonic lodges, the psychological weight of these rituals, combined with the fear of expulsion and social disgrace, created a level of tension and apprehension among members that contemporaries described as intimidating or even terrifying. Observers, especially in the 18th century when Freemasonry spread widely across Europe, viewed the secrecy and discipline with deep suspicion, interpreting ritualized symbolism as potential heresy or subversion. Another disturbing truth lies in the hierarchical nature of Masonic progression. New members began with basic knowledge and ritual, but as they advanced, they were gradually introduced to more complex symbolism, philosophy, and secret signs. This gradual reveal was deliberate, ensuring that loyalty was established before the full depth of the organization's knowledge was understood. The psychological effect of such progression was profound. Members became increasingly invested in the fraternity, protecting secrets and accepting rituals without question, even if the ceremonies challenged personal comfort or public norms. Historical observers, particularly church authorities, saw this method as dangerous, arguing that it created blind allegiance to an organization that operated independently of religious or state oversight. The early spread of Freemasonry into England, France, and the American colonies magnified these fears. Governments and clergy recorded concern that the rituals, while appearing harmless on the surface, created a network of influence that was hidden, disciplined, and immune to ordinary supervision. Pamphlets circulated accusing Freemasons of corrupting youth, promoting heretical ideas, or subverting authority, often exaggerating but always based on real evidence of secrecy, oath-bound loyalty, and ritualized hierarchy. The rituals themselves became symbols of this hidden power, solemn, mysterious, and deliberately incomprehensible to outsiders. The combination of symbolic ceremony, oath-taking, and structured secrecy created a psychological pressure unique in European society, one that medieval and early modern observers often described as deeply unsettling and sometimes frightening. Even beyond accusations and public fear, the true power of Freemason rituals lay in their subtle psychological impact. By the very act of participating in ceremonies, adhering to oaths, and internalizing hierarchical discipline, members were transformed in ways that left lasting influence. Rituals reinforced loyalty, promoted mutual accountability, and instilled a sense of shared purpose that transcended ordinary social bonds. Historians emphasize that this effect, though invisible, was potent. Secrecy combined with ritual created an internalized obedience that was difficult for outsiders to disrupt, and terrifying to those who believed the society could wield influence far beyond its visible membership. By the end of the 18th century, Freemasonry had grown into a powerful network whose rituals were both admired and feared. Their ceremonies, while symbolic, had real consequences for the social, political, and religious landscape. Modern myths about occult practices, conspiracies, and hidden control are often exaggerated, but they stem from the authentic truth that ritual, secrecy, and oath-bound loyalty were central to the organization's identity, and that such mechanisms, when misunderstood, appear deeply unsettling. The historical reality of Freemason rituals demonstrates a chilling principle, that the combination of secrecy, symbolic discipline, and hierarchical progression can create devotion, obedience, and influence without visible coercion, producing a subtle yet enduring form of power that can terrify even those who do not participate. As Freemasonry expanded across Europe during the 17th and 18th centuries, it inevitably attracted scrutiny from both secular authorities and the Church, and the investigation of their rituals revealed a level of secrecy and psychological influence that many observers found deeply unsettling. The earliest inquiries into lodge practices highlighted that initiates were subjected to oaths and ceremonies whose meanings were deliberately concealed from outsiders. Candidates were sworn to silence under moral and social penalties, a practice that contemporary critics described as creating invisible chains. Historical pamphlets, sermons, and trial records reveal that authorities often feared not the overt actions of Freemasons, but the invisible mechanisms by which loyalty, obedience, and secrecy were cultivated. These rituals, designed to instill a sense of belonging and hierarchical respect, created an order capable of operating independently of public oversight, which to observers appeared threatening and, at times, incomprehensible. One of the most disturbing elements noted in historical records was the rigor of initiation ceremonies. Initiates were blindfolded, guided through symbolic trials, and required to demonstrate courage and obedience before fully understanding the significance of their actions. Though seemingly allegorical, these ceremonies imposed psychological pressure designed to forge loyalty and suppress doubt. Contemporary critics interpreted these symbolic gestures as potentially dangerous, claiming they could manipulate thought and create unquestioning devotion to the order. Unlike common guild practices, Freemasonry's rituals were carefully constructed, repetitive, and layered in complexity, gradually exposing members to deeper levels of knowledge only after trust and obedience had been established. Historians today note that such methods of progressive indoctrination are highly effective at creating internalized loyalty, a fact that terrified church authorities and governments alike. The hierarchy and internal discipline of the Freemasons magnified the intensity of these rituals. Early documents show that senior members held considerable authority over novices, including the right to judge adherence to oaths and moral conduct within the lodge. This authority was ritualized, reinforced during initiation, and maintained throughout a member's progression in rank. Investigators frequently described this structure as creating a society within a society, one whose internal loyalty could not be disrupted by external oversight. What terrified contemporaries was the potential for these ritualized systems to extend influence beyond the lodge itself. Freemasons were often highly educated, socially connected, and strategically positioned, which made authorities wary that the rituals fostering obedience and secrecy could have consequences far beyond the walls of their meeting rooms. Accusations of misconduct and heresy, while often exaggerated, arose directly from the order's secretive nature. For centuries, critics claimed that the hidden elements of Masonic ritual, passwords, signs, symbolic gestures, and allegorical punishments were evidence of corrupt or even subversive intentions. In truth, the rituals were largely symbolic and moralistic, but the very act of concealing them amplified fear. Early observers, unable to discern their true meaning, speculated on the worst possible outcomes, equating secrecy with danger, obedience with brainwashing, and allegory with real-world moral corruption. The power of this perception, documented in contemporary pamphlets and sermons, demonstrates that rituals alone, when hidden from public knowledge, can provoke fear far greater than any overt transgression. Historical accounts also describe moral tests imposed during initiation, designed to impress upon new members the importance of discretion, courage, and loyalty. Some accusations suggested that failure to adhere to ritual protocol would result in humiliation, ostracism, or spiritual condemnation. While the physical severity of these tests has been largely debunked, the psychological intensity cannot be underestimated. Blindfolded initiates, guided through symbolic death and rebirth ceremonies, were confronted with their own vulnerability, uncertainty, and dependence on senior members. To an outside observer, especially one predisposed to mistrust secret societies, these rituals appeared terrifyingly manipulative, a psychological mechanism capable of binding individuals to an unseen authority. The most compelling evidence of the disturbing nature of Freemason rituals comes from documented attempts by governments and church authorities to regulate or suppress the order. In France, England, and various Italian states, investigations into lodges were prompted by fear that secret knowledge and oath-bound loyalty could be used for political subversion. Reports from these inquiries repeatedly emphasized the intensity of ritual discipline, the moral weight of the oaths, and the psychological pressure imposed on members to maintain secrecy. The fear was not that Freemasons performed harmful acts, but that their internal cohesion, secrecy, and loyalty could enable influence or coordination beyond the reach of traditional oversight. The rituals themselves were functional tools of control, producing obedience and unity that outsiders could neither monitor nor challenge, a fact that made them appear both terrifying and threatening. Even more unsettling is the persistence of these rituals over centuries. Historical documents show that ceremonies and symbolic tests remained largely consistent, preserving their structure while adapting to changing social contexts. This durability demonstrates that the rituals were not trivial but intentionally designed to instill long-lasting psychological effects: obedience, secrecy, and a profound sense of belonging. The continuity of these practices also contributed to the enduring mystery surrounding Freemasonry. Outsiders could observe the network of lodges and notice the loyalty of members, but without understanding the rituals that shaped them, fear and speculation filled the gaps. The unknown became more frightening than any verified act. By the end of the 18th century, Freemason rituals had inspired not only historical investigation, but also widespread cultural anxiety. Pamphlets, sermons, and public warnings portrayed the ceremonies as morally dangerous, psychologically manipulative, and potentially subversive. Even modern historians acknowledge that, while exaggerated, these interpretations were grounded in truth. The rituals were secretive, hierarchically enforced, and psychologically effective. They demonstrate the enduring principle that ritualized obedience combined with secrecy produces both loyalty and fear, a mechanism as unsettling in the 18th century as it would be today. The historical fear of Freemason rituals serves as a reminder that secrecy and discipline, even without overt violence, can inspire suspicion and terror. By creating a closed system where loyalty is reinforced through ceremony and oaths, the Freemasons demonstrated a psychological power that authorities could neither observe nor control. It is this authentic historical mechanism, ritualized secrecy, moral testing, and hierarchical influence that forms the foundation for the centuries of myth, speculation, and fear surrounding the order. Even when stripped of fantasy, the real rituals of the Freemasons remain deeply disturbing because they reveal the extraordinary capacity of ceremony to shape behavior, influence thought, and generate apprehension far beyond its immediate participants. As Freemasonry spread across Europe and later into the American colonies, the secrecy of its rituals became a source of intense scrutiny, controversy, and fear. Unlike ordinary clubs or guilds, the Freemasons operated with a strict hierarchy and concealed knowledge that was revealed progressively only to those who had earned the trust and completed previous ceremonies. Early observers, including clerics, monarchs, and political authorities, found themselves confronted with an organization whose internal operations were invisible yet cohesive, whose loyalty was unquestionable, and whose members could potentially wield influence far beyond what was publicly known. The secrecy itself became the most unsettling element. The ceremonies were less frightening in their content than in their deliberate inaccessibility, which left observers imagining horrors far beyond what actually occurred. In this vacuum, suspicion, rumor, and exaggeration flourished, creating a culture in which the unknown became terrifying. Throughout the 18th century, reports surfaced documenting the anxiety caused by Freemason rituals. In France, England, and parts of Italy, authorities investigated lodges, often prompted by allegations that secret ceremonies encouraged disloyalty, heresy, or moral corruption. These investigations revealed the carefully structured nature of initiation, where candidates were exposed to symbolic trials, blindfolded passages, and oath-bound commitments that reinforced obedience, discretion, and fraternity. While these rituals were primarily symbolic, their psychological impact was profound. Initiates were placed in vulnerable positions, relying entirely on senior members for guidance and affirmation. Contemporary observers describe these experiences as unnerving and mysterious, noting that the combination of oath, ritual, and hierarchy could induce both fear and absolute devotion. This structured secrecy, when viewed externally, appeared as a hidden mechanism of control, capable of shaping thought and behavior far beyond the lodge walls. Some of the most documented controversies stemmed from the perceived consequences of violating Masonic oaths or failing to perform rituals correctly. Historical pamphlets and court records describe accusations that members who disrespected ceremonies or divulged secrets faced social ostracism, symbolic punishments, or moral condemnation. While there is no verified evidence of physical harm, the symbolic and psychological weight of these penalties was significant. For outsiders, the combination of ritualized testing, hierarchical judgment, and enforced secrecy created an image of coercion and intimidation. Clergy and secular leaders repeatedly expressed concern that such practices could cultivate blind obedience, enabling individuals to prioritize loyalty to the lodge over allegiance to church or state. The very design of these rituals, gradual induction, controlled revelation, and oath-bound secrecy, amplified their perceived danger in the public imagination. The fear surrounding Freemason rituals intensified with high-profile political and religious conflicts. In France, the infamous anti-Masonic pamphlets of the 1720s and 1730s accused lodges of corrupting youth, influencing governments, and practicing hidden rites incompatible with Catholic doctrine. Although many of these claims were sensationalized, they reflected authentic unease. The order's rituals were intentionally private, their moral weight enforced through oath and ceremony, and their members bound together by loyalty and secrecy. These features made them seem incomprehensible and therefore threatening. Public imagination transformed symbolic gestures into acts of moral or spiritual transgression, and the lodge itself became a symbol of unseen power and hidden influence. The intensity of suspicion alone demonstrates that rituals, even devoid of physical violence or overt malevolence, can generate fear when combined with secrecy and psychological discipline. In England and the American colonies, similar concerns arose. Investigations into lodges emphasized the mysterious nature of initiation ceremonies, the use of symbolic punishments, and the commitment to secrecy, all of which were interpreted as potentially destabilizing. Early records note that candidates were blindfolded, guided through allegorical trials, and required to internalize moral lessons while keeping them secret from the uninitiated. To outsiders, this process appeared manipulative, intimidating, and psychologically potent. The same mechanism that created moral and philosophical reflection within the lodge, ritual, oath, and hierarchy, was perceived externally as a form of control capable of influencing behavior far beyond the lodge. Even minor deviations in ritual were viewed as evidence of subversive intent, magnifying the fear surrounding ceremonies whose true meaning remained inaccessible. The historical evidence demonstrates that the most disturbing aspect of Freemason rituals was not their content, but their structure. The combination of secrecy, hierarchical authority, and symbolic enforcement produced loyalty that was difficult to observe, regulate, or disrupt. The order's ceremonies created an environment where internalized obedience, discipline, and discretion were more powerful than any external threat. Investigators, critics, and clergy repeatedly noted that this psychological mechanism was both effective and frightening. The inability to access the inner workings of lodges led to a climate in which imagination substituted for fact, creating myths that often exaggerated the ritual's symbolic elements into moral or spiritual threats. In essence, the fear generated by Freemasonry was a reflection of the order's successful use of secrecy and ritualized discipline. By the late 18th century, Freemason rituals had entered popular consciousness as mysterious, morally ambiguous, and potentially subversive. Pamphlets, sermons, and public warnings amplified anxiety, while the psychological and symbolic effectiveness of the rituals ensured that members remained loyal and discreet. Even today, the historical reality of these practices continues to inspire fascination and fear. The documented initiation ceremonies, oath-bound secrecy, and hierarchical progression reveal a sophisticated system for shaping loyalty and belief, one that was, for its time, extraordinarily effective. The true terror, as recognized by contemporaries, lay not in sensationalized occultism, but in the invisible control of mind and behavior achieved through structured, secretive ritual. Freemason rituals, while symbolic and philosophical in intent, illustrate a powerful principle. Secrecy, combined with ceremony, produces influence that can extend far beyond the immediate participants. The documented historical investigations, controversies, and anxieties surrounding these practices demonstrate that the organization's internal discipline was so effective that it provoked fear in governments, religious authorities, and the public alike. By the end of the 18th century, Freemasonry had achieved both legitimacy and notoriety, ensuring that its rituals, though primarily symbolic, would remain a source of intrigue, suspicion, and dark fascination for centuries to come. The legacy of Freemason rituals is less a story of overt violence and more a story of influence, secrecy, and psychological mastery. By the 19th century, the rituals that had once caused fear among kings, clergy, and commoners alike had transformed into symbols of hidden power. While the ceremonies themselves remained largely symbolic and philosophical, the structure they enforced, loyalty, obedience, and discretion, had created an invisible authority that could not be monitored or controlled. Outsiders, never permitted to witness the inner workings of lodges, imagined the worst. Rumors of moral corruption, secret alliances, and occult practices flourished, not because the rituals were inherently sinister, but because secrecy amplified suspicion. The terror of Freemasonry did not require spectacle. It thrived in the quiet, disciplined obedience of its members, a fear both historical and enduring. Historical accounts demonstrate that these rituals were highly effective at shaping behavior. Initiates were gradually exposed to symbolic knowledge through blindfolded ceremonies, allegorical trials, and oath-bound commitments. Each step reinforced loyalty and secrecy, creating a psychological structure in which members were invested emotionally, morally, and socially. Outside observers, however, could not distinguish between symbolism and subversion, allegory and manipulation. This gap between internal intent and external perception produced centuries of misunderstanding, paranoia, and conspiracy theories. What was intended as moral and philosophical instruction became, to the fearful observer, a mechanism of control and domination, capable of influencing not only members, but entire societies. The social and political implications of Freemason rituals further intensified fear. In Europe, members were often influential figures in government, finance, and the church. While in the American colonies, lodges became spaces for intellectual exchange and civic organization. The secrecy that protected these rituals simultaneously fostered suspicion. Critics argued that such concentrated, unseen loyalty could threaten monarchies, religious authority, and public order. Allegations of collusion, manipulation, and hidden agendas proliferated in pamphlets, sermons, and newspapers, frequently exaggerating but grounded in the authentic reality of ritual secrecy and hierarchical control. Freemasonry had demonstrated a terrifying principle: that discipline, ritual, and secrecy, even without overt criminal acts, could generate fear and influence on a massive scale. Modern fascination with Freemasons often exaggerates the fantastical elements of their ceremonies, imagining occult magic, hidden treasures, or conspiratorial plots controlling world events. Yet historical research confirms that the authentic source of concern lies in the organization's psychological and social mechanics. Oath-bound secrecy, symbolic trials, and hierarchical obedience ensured cohesion and discretion, creating a system of influence difficult to observe or disrupt. For centuries, this unseen order produced anxiety among observers who assumed the worst about what they could not see. The terror of Freemason rituals was never about what could be proven, but about what might exist behind closed doors, a shadow of possibility amplified by imagination, rumor, and history. Documented investigations from France, England, and Italy reveal that authorities were aware of the potential power of these rituals, yet often powerless to interfere. Reports note the intensity of initiation ceremonies, the psychological impact of symbolic punishments, and the unwavering loyalty of members even when challenged publicly. These records show that Freemasonry's influence was as much a product of ritual as it was of social networking. By controlling knowledge, orchestrating moral tests, and enforcing secrecy, the order created a network of individuals bound together psychologically, morally, and socially, a system as invisible as it was effective. To outsiders, this structure was terrifying precisely because it could not be fully understood, measured, or challenged. The enduring fascination and fear surrounding Freemason rituals highlight a fundamental truth about secrecy and human psychology. Rituals, when combined with hierarchical authority and progressive revelation, create influence that extends far beyond the immediate participants. The fear of such rituals persists because secrecy transforms uncertainty into suspicion and suspicion into legend. Historical investigations, contemporary criticisms, and surviving records all confirm that the ceremonies were carefully constructed to reinforce loyalty and obedience, but the external perception transformed them into something dark and threatening. The very success of these rituals made them frightening. A system that works invisibly is always more unsettling than one that is exposed.